Well, good news out of Kings Island this week as the park posted promo pictures for Halloween Haunt, and it shows that we're getting an extra operating weekend. But are we? Hello, everybody. Alongside Don Helbig, I'm Ryan Sir, and this is Tower Topics.
Tower Topics is a podcast by Kings Island fans for Kings Island fans because that's who we are, and that's who we care about.
Yeah, so we will talk about this. The elephant in the room, though, Don, is you made a certain social media post that really blew up. And you're alluding to the fact that you won't be at the park for a while. Let me pull up what you exactly said. It's a little hard to read on the screen here, but it says, "Today I enjoy what may be my last visit to Kings Island for the foreseeable future. Thanks for the memories. Fittingly played in Coney Mall as I exited the racer for the 12,250th time. With the time left in 2024, I want to focus on more visits to Dollywood, Holiday World, Kennywood, Cedar Point, and Kentucky Kingdom. I really enjoyed my time at those parks this year." And it's a nostalgic picture of you with the racer. So, Don, did you get banned?
No, nothing even close to that. You know, Ryan, when I looked at the operating calendar, and I started looking at it a couple of weeks ago, time's running out. A lot of parks now are, after this week, are going to be, weekend operations. Some already are.
Mm-hmm.
And, I have season passes to Dollywood, Holiday World, Kentucky Kingdom, Kennywood. I got a Six Flags season pass. So there's other parks that, I've been to this year that I enjoyed. I want to make sure that I get back there, a couple more times. There's a couple parks that I haven't been to yet with my Six Flags pass that I'd like to get to. And I'd like to go back to Six Flags Great America in Chicago. So, in order to do those parks, and I want to check out their Halloween events. I want to check out, the ones that have the holiday event. I want to check those out. So there's only so many days in a calendar. So many, on the weekends. Sundays are out for me because, being a big Bengal fan, I'm either going to be watching it on TV, going to the road game, or at Paycor Stadium for the game. And if they're playing at home on that Sunday, that Saturday is kind of, going to be tough. I'm going to be getting back real late at night and stuff from some of these places. So it was just really, that, and the word was May, be my last visit for the foreseeable future, and that is May. Just that I just want to spend some time at those other parks that I've had, just a really good time at this year, and just making sure I'm getting the most out of my season passes from all those parks. As simply as that.
So you didn't get banned. I'm kidding. When I saw that post, I remember texting you saying like everyone's gonna think you got banned, but they can't.
No, that's no, not at all. And like I said, I was very transparent on what I was looking to do, and that was to visit those other parks. And I've just had a great time at those places, and I've been to Kings Island this year 28 times. And I've enjoyed each and every one of those visits. It's been great. Nothing negative there. So it's just that time's running out to make the most of my passes at those other parks.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's as simple as that.
Yep. Yeah, I see where you're coming from. Now, let's move on to the actual subject matter of today's episode, if you're listening during the day. So I, like many others, was super excited because, pictures started circulating around that they were listing Haunt as running through November 3rd, which Halloween's on so sometimes when Halloween's on Friday, when the 31st is on a Friday, it'll run through November 2nd because they'll be open that whole weekend afterward. But Halloween's on Thursday this year, and they're open the 1st through the 3rd. So that adds an extra operating weekend to the calendar, right, Don?
Right.
Except it doesn't. Why? What did you of all people, nobody else has noticed this yet. I haven't seen this online at all.
Well, I mean, when you look at their operating calendar, now when they first published the fall calendar and the winter calendar, it had Winterfest opening the week before Thanksgiving this year on the 22nd, through the 24th, which historically that's been the weekend when it falls, with Thanksgiving there. So it was always Black Friday. But, this year Thanksgiving later in the month, Black Friday on, at the end of the month there. So when they first put that out there, which was announced, through the signage in the park, and then you went to the app or you went to the website and you saw those dates there, the Winterfest dates were still there. And I was like, wow, that's only going to give them a couple weeks to turn that around, for Winterfest. Normally you need every day of those 3 weeks to get the park ready for Winterfest. But then, check the operating calendar shows those dates are now gone. So it was addition by subtraction. So they, when it looked like they were going to do what a lot of other parks have done, adding dates to the calendar, that hasn't been the case. It's just, they just swapped out a weekend.
Yeah, and so I was really excited because we've had a lot of these people on the like the attractions group podcast especially. So Dollywood, Kennywood, Holiday World, like all of them have added substantial hours and days to their calendar, while Kings Island has either been neutral or rolled stuff back. Now they did add. Was this the year they added the operating week? I think they did, because it was right after we did the episode about how terrible their calendar is, and they added a week. But I think
yeah, because it looked like it was going to close a week earlier because it wasn't published on the website. So whether that was already in there and it just didn't get done right when they were putting the calendar together and publishing it, or it was something that they revisited and said no, we can operate another week. So I don't know what that was. I mean, sometimes one of the reasons Kings Island historically had been one of the last parks to ever put out their operating calendar for the next year. And one of those reasons was, they always wanted to find out when schools were going to be starting, with staffing and all that. So it all revolves around that. Not just here, it's everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It revolves around when schools are going back. You got Six Flags Over Georgia. They closed daily operation July 31st.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So, yeah, because schools were starting there like August 4th. So it's just really something that, plays into it. And it was pretty quick after the calendar came out. We did the episode. We talked about that it was a shorter calendar than before, and then those dates, were added. Let's be honest, we had no influence on that, Brian. We talked about it. We had no influence on that. That just was something that was probably in the works trying to get done. And, then you saw that weekend added for Haunt.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's nice. It's usually nice weather that last week, first week in November. Still pretty good time to go to the park. Some other parks, were open along Cedar Point. Same thing. They added that weekend for their Hallow Weekends event. So it looked like, parks around the chain were doing that. And, it just looked like, okay, there's only going to be a 2-week, window till Winterfest, but it's doable. I mean, other parks have that same situation where sometimes things are.
A lot of other parks
starting
are
a little bit
open during that week. Like, I think Carowinds and maybe even King's Dominion have done the peanut celebration between Haunt and Winterfest. So it's certainly capable of being open during those days. So I don't think I would ever buy the excuse that like, oh, we need time to prepare. It's like, well, call your sister parks. They figured it out,
Yeah. Now we both saw on social media, when that calendar came out for the fall and winter, how many, people were excited that it was starting, the weekend before Thanksgiving, and, they were getting an extra weekend of Winterfest. And you got to wonder, what if some of those people don't go back and check the website?
Mm-hmm.
Or they don't follow them on social media, and they already, planned to visit Kings Island that weekend, and they thinking it's open, and now it's not. So hopefully the park, puts something out there, not just slapping it on social media, but, sends an advisory to the news media that, and lets them know there's been a change. Just not this is our calendar. Let them know there's been a change.
Yeah.
Be transparent with that. What they did right now, it looks a little sneaky. Like, we'll just do this and no one's going to notice. Well, they did.
You did. I honestly, I'm wondering if by the time, because so obviously we record a week's worth of these in one day. We're always very transparent about that. But this is the episode that'll drop in 2 days. And I'm really wondering if this is still going to be news to people that they cut that first weekend of Winterfest in favor of an extra weekend of Haunt. So let me ask you this, Don. Do you think that this was a decision simply based on they think that it would either be more crowded or more profitable or something to add the extra weekend of Haunt than to add the weekend of Winterfest? Like, where do you think their heads are with that? Do you think it's a business decision, or is it a logistics thing where it made more sense to do it that way, or what?
Well, I think it's a business decision. Everything they do is a business decision. So, yeah, I mean, you're definitely going to have better, you would think, the first week in November is going to be better weather than the third week in November. Historically it is in Cincinnati, so I would think that would have been, would have gone into the thinking. You got, Haunt still set up and everything, so you just roll right into it. And there's always been a lot of guests wanting to know why the park was never open on those first weekends, except for those odd times that it was. So I just think if you're looking to, and also that's right around that time where the fall season pass deadline approaches. So to get it at the lowest price, you're hitting around that time. So it's also going to tie into that, to come visit the park for the last time, get your pass for the, before the price goes up. So a lot of things, business wise, made sense to do that.
Yeah, I mean, you used the word sneaky for this.
Well, there was just putting it on the calendar. There was no communication
Yeah.
whatsoever that they made that change when they had put it out there, weeks before that Winterfest was going to be open that weekend.
Yeah, well, my only thought is that like it's not a net gain or a loss. It's equal. So probably the right thing to do would be to make sure that people know it's not open that weekend. But what would be sneaky is if they eliminated operating days and were quiet about that. At least with this,
yes. It's a swap.
Yeah, it's just a swap.
It's a swap. But the thing is, it had been out there, for
mm,
for some time, and some people had, marked their calendar for that weekend, and now it's off the calendar, and without any mention that it's off the calendar, outside of they just put it on their website quietly.
Yeah, I mean, what I really dislike is when and Kings Island has been guilty. It's been a while since I've heard this excuse, but I remember it was a big problem of like in September, people would show up and like in the early days of, I wouldn't say the early days of Facebook. I remember it being like a thing though, where people would be like, why aren't you open on September 12th? It's a Saturday. Like, I don't get it. And, the park would always come back with always check the calendar before you come. And it's like, I think that's
Right.
kind of nowadays, it's kind of like you'd use the app to plan your visit and stuff. So it's just a little bit more inherent. But I think that
Right.
going on the website and checking the calendar before you visit, before like smartphones were a thing, was a big ask, because, Kings Island's open 10 a.m. to 10 p.m., and then I bet even now, like this week, as of this recording, it's 8 o'clock close for the week. I bet that comes as news to like 30% of the population. Like, was that?
There are still people that were coming in. You leave the park at 7:30, and you're seeing a big influx of people coming in, thinking it is open until 10 o'clock. That they're going to use their dining plan. They're going to ride a couple rides. They're going to watch, a nighttime show, and park closes at 8. So yeah, I mean, it's you can't assume that everyone's going to look at your Facebook and your X and go to the website. You can't assume that. I mean, people are creatures of habit, and historically the park had been open, that week until 10 p.m. So yeah, I mean, you just got to always communicate. You can't over communicate. You got to let people know what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. So I want to hear everyone's opinions in the comments. Would you rather have an extra weekend of Haunt or an extra weekend of Winterfest? Because it sounds like, from what we're looking at here, they took off a weekend of Winterfest in favor of Haunt. Were you in favor of that? Or would you rather have had that extra early opening of Winterfest? I want to say this, Don.
Yeah, I'm curious to see what everyone's going to say because, for me, if I was, going primarily to ride rides and that, yeah, I would definitely love that extra weekend at the end, for Haunt. But at the same time, if you're going for the event, you might have been there, 2 times, 3 times, whatever it might have been for Haunt. I mean, you're ready for the next event. You're ready for Winterfest.
Yeah, for me, I like Winterfest better than Haunt, but I will tell you that I probably would prefer more Haunt simply because with Winterfest, I feel like, yeah, like I make a lot of visits, obviously, and I think after 3 or 4, it starts to get real dry to you because it's not designed to be an event that you go to all the time. It's supposed to be a one,
Right.
2, 3 times per season, but you get into this lull, especially the week between Christmas and New Year's. That's a great time to visit. Don't get me wrong, but when the excitement of Christmas is over and stuff like that, it's almost kind of depressing. So I don't I'm not really asking for more time with Winterfest. That's also why I'm not a huge advocate for adding the weekend after New Year's for Winterfest too. I just
Yeah, I'm not either on that.
I mean, I'm fine with, like, I always love New Year's Eve at the park. Highly recommend, spending your New Year's Eve at the park. They do a great fireworks show and a balloon drop and stuff. We don't know the details this year, but that's what they've done the last several years. That's one of my favorite nights of the year, and I love to end the season that way. But
Yeah, and also, Ryan, on that, last weekend of Haunt, the trade off on those Saturdays that you would have had for Winterfest or that Haunt day is you're going to have a little bit longer hours on that Saturday on November 2nd than you were going to have on the 23rd of November.
Correct. Yeah. And you mentioned more rides are open if that's your thing. The entertainment at Winterfest is better than the entertainment at Haunt as far as stage shows are concerned. But I like having the later hours. And mainly it's because it's a flexibility thing where if you, like, if a Saturday gets away from you and it starts to get 6, 7 o'clock, you start questioning, like, well, the park closes at 10. Should I even bother? But if it's open till midnight, heck, it's 10 o'clock. There's still 2 hours left, or 9 o'clock,
Right.
So that's always a good thing. Of course, it's way more crowded too, but Winterfest gets crowded too. All right. Don, we sell t-shirts. Inform
We
them.
do. We do sell t-shirts. It's got the Tower Topics logo on the front. Very nice logo designed by Ryan Sir. These t-shirts are $22. They come in a Carolina blue. If you're interested in one, they come in whatever size you would need. You would just need to send us a direct message on our X, which is Tower_Topics, or you can send a direct message to either Ryan or myself, or leave a message here on, if you're watching on YouTube, just leave a YouTube message and we'll reach out and connect with you, and we'll send you the QR code to place your order, and it just takes a matter of days once you place your order to get your shirt.
Yeah, $22 including shipping. Any size you need. We get it to you in just a couple days. It's a great deal. We'll be right back with the listener questions. All right, first listener question from Elijah M. from Whereabouts Unknown. He said, "Hey guys, I got a few questions for the podcast I'd like to share. First, in my time working at KI recently, I remember there being a media day for Haunt, specifically back in 2019. Does Park still offer this? How should we know? I know you guys won't be invited anyways, unfortunately." Oh, he covered that one for me.
Okay, yes, he did.
And if they don't, do you guys have any guesses as to why not? Is he asking why we're not invited or why they don't do it?
No, I think why not? Why don't they do that anymore? Like with the big RIP party that they used to do. I mean, that was a huge deal when I first started working there in 2007.
You guys did a whole show with it. Remember when you did it in the International Restaurant with the dead body and the casket?
We did. And then there was that. And then there was a big thing, when Urgent Scare opened up, we did something in what is now the brew house.
Yes.
We did something in there that was, and these things were experiences, for that. We would get, it was immensely popular with the media, 400 or 500. It even got up to like 700 people eventually were coming for this. But the problem is, in the last few years, why they haven't done this, in part, and number one, it's very expensive. Number two, the intent of what that was for wasn't happening anymore. When it first started, you would see them, the media, doing stories about Haunt was starting. They would talk about it the next morning on the radio shows, and that they would talk about, the mazes and things they went through. But as it kind of got deeper and deeper into it, as the years went by, it became more of, we're just going to hang out here and eat the food and, drink the drinks, and we might walk around the park a little bit, and you weren't seeing the return for the park. There wasn't the social media impressions that had been out there before. You weren't seeing any of those kind of things. So for the park, it was spending a lot of money, very little return. So it made a lot of sense to just, if the media wants to come out, they still take care of them. They give them the fright lane, let them experience that, get them their mission in that. So they still get them in the park. They might go back to the RP party. We, like you and I, don't know. We're not on an invite list anyway. But the last couple of years, and I thought it made sense to just kind of move away from it, because it wasn't doing what it did from like 2007 to about 2015, 16 range. It just wasn't doing the same thing in terms of the media using it and posting multiple photos around the park, on their social media channels, talking about the event. So it made sense. Next question. You said you had a couple.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, Don. Do you think that that is because, I mean, I'm just thinking about the time frame, and I feel like when they stopped kind of doing that, that was also the kind of the era where the houses were around for decades, the era that we're kind
Yeah.
of in now. So maybe it's kind of like, well, there's one new house, but the rest is old news, so there's not a lot to talk about.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. There's not as many new things.
okay. Well, the second part of his question, he says, um, Don, if you're able to share during your time running KI social sites, how much of it was posted? How much of what was posted was decided by corporate, and what kind of control did they have versus what you had?
Well, it wasn't micromanaged at all. During my time doing, I pretty much could create the content calendar and talk about the different things. There were, every now and then there would be some things that were, sponsor related, where you'd have to post something about Eisenberg hot dogs, or Progressive Insurance. So a couple of those things a month would come up where you just had to work it, and they weren't telling you what day to do it. You had your option on when you wanted to place that in there. Uh, the content calendar would be viewed, by people in the corporate office, and if they had questions, they could reach out. They, rarely ever did, but they just wanted to make sure, that you had, you were talking about season pass, somewhere in your content calendar mix, that you were talking about the upcoming events and things. So, uh, you know, for me, no, it wasn't micromanaged at all. The majority of what you saw during my time there, were the content ideas that I had.
Yeah. Okay. Next question, Christopher K from Muncie, Indiana. Dude, is Christopher Knight from Muncie, Indiana, by any chance?
It is.
Oh wow. Okay. If you if you could have the park add one food item, what would it be?
Wow, that's a great question.
Bucky's.
No. I two things. I do miss the fried chicken that they used to have, Columbia Palace. That meal you could get there with the fried chicken. That was kind of a staple for me in the 70s and 1980s. So I would like to see maybe fried chicken come back. Or just recently, having been down in Santa Claus, Indiana, I went to the Santa Castle candy shop, and I had this frozen hot chocolate. I think that would be an awesome treat to add. What about you, Ryan?
I've said for a long time, and I understand why it's a no, but like an Italian kind of thing. I know they have Hugo's at Cedar Point, but I feel like, well, on one hand, a lot of people would think that Italian food's a little heavy for the park, but they do have Skyline, which I feel like is heavier than any Italian food. But I'd love to see like a spaghetti, lasagna, that kind of thing. I'd love to see what the culinary team whipped up for that. All right, next listener question, Joey Y. A long time debate with my better half. All day dining. I say have one person get it and share it all day with your kids or group you're with. Plan accordingly and be smart with your time. Some may think this is unethical / not what the park has in mind for the all day dining plan. I say the park pretty much expects this, still makes money, builds it into the costs and perimeters of the plan, and perhaps even welcomes it. When do you think What do you think the park really feels or cares about in regards to sharing an all-day meal plan? Would love to hear your thoughts on this. Thanks and love your podcast. Well, we'd love to have you as a listener, Joey Y. Don, all-day dining.
Well, I can tell you that that's not what the park wants to see, is you getting one all-day dining and then sharing it with whatever number of family members you have. With that, I also think the more people that would do that, that would lead to maybe a reduction in the portion sizes that you're getting if they saw a lot of people doing it that way. So there's more downside to doing that in the long run than there would be the upside for guests trying to pull that off right now. So I wouldn't recommend that. I think just buy a dining plan for everybody.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn about the ethics behind it, because I'm certain that the park probably, I'm sure that they say like this is intended for one person in the fine print, but legally speaking, that probably means like you can't work off your wristband and put it on me. Like that would be a violation of the terms. But it's if you and I go to Texas Roadhouse and you're like, I don't want a baked potato. Here, take my baked potato, and I eat it. Like that's none of their business.
Yeah, I mean I see that point.
But on the other hand, if you and I go to Golden Corral and you order the buffet and I order nothing, and you're like, oh, here's baked potatoes, I don't like them. That's unethical. This falls in
Right.
between that somewhere. So from an
It
ethics
does.
standpoint, I would say it's a bit of a gray area. I would say from a policy standpoint, they probably greatly frown upon it. But yes, there always is some sort of element of shrink built into every cost ever. So
Right.
yeah. Okay. Last listener question. Tiffany H. from Port Huron, Michigan. With Cedar Point having some great culinary options, Grand Pavilion, Farmhouse, for example, do you think Kings Island will ever get to those levels of quality? Ooh, that's a slap in the face, Tiffany H.
I will say this: those two places she mentioned, the Grand Pavilion, Farmhouse, phenomenal.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that is, top shelf. Hard to beat it in the industry. The portion sizes are, really good, especially at the Grand Pavilion. Those chicken tenders, they're not these little small ones that you get at other parks. Really good. Three of them. I mean, I couldn't eat three of them. That's how big they were and stuff. So, but will Kings Island get to that level? I will say this, that Kings Island has two locations, Coney Barbecue and the Miami River Brew House, and I think those two are very close to what you're getting at Cedar Point, if not on par with it, depending on what menu item you purchased.
Yeah, I mean, nothing beats their turkey. I'll tell you that much, but that's a particular favorite of mine. But I agree, like Kings Island's, and I made this very clear. I think it peaked in 2022. It took a pretty big step back in 2023. In 2024, it's edged a little bit forward. It's definitely been better than 2023. But a lot of this comes down to preference too. Like Grand Pavilion, a lot of the food options very loosely, maybe you're kind of tantamount to brew house, but the Farmhouse is Cedar Point's Coney Barbecue. So a lot
Yes.
of it comes down to your preferences. But we've seen a lot of complaints about the size of like the chicken tenders, how they're like chicken fingers. That's gotten better over the past month or so because they were
It
like
has.
sad. Now they're not as
Yeah.
big as they were in the past, but at least it's like, okay, that's a chicken tender. Like this isn't an insult. But
Yeah. Well,
uh,
let me throw this out to the listeners, and if you're watching on YouTube, leave us a comment there. They mentioned the Grand Pavilion. Would you rather have something of that magnitude, a Grand Pavilion, built at Kings Island, or would you rather have something in the Vortex spot?
what about a Grand Pavilion in the Vortex spot? Hmm?
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Hmm?
What would you rather
Hmm?
have? Yes. I mean, what would you rather have? And I think there's a number. We know what the enthusiasts would want, but there's a number of guests that would think that, something like that, indoor seating and everything gobbles up a lot of people. So there's something to be said for both ends. So we would like to hear your thoughts. What would you rather have? Something in the Vortex spot or something like the Grand Pavilion?
Yeah, drop us a comment. Hey, I'm Ryan Sir along with Don Helbig, and this is Tower Topics.